What if the man you passed by every day, the one who seemed so ordinary, was once a shadow soldier who saved the president's life? In a small town in New York, Sam Obasi leads a simple life, unnoticed by most. But when the president himself unexpectedly steps out of his official car and embraces him in tears, the truth of Sam's past comes crashing into the present. Once a covert operative in a military coup, Sam's story is far from what it seems. Hidden in plain sight, Sam must now face a past he thought was lost forever. This is The Last Watchman, a story of redemption, healing, and the quiet strength of second chances. But what happens when the ghosts of the past collide with the life you've built in the present? Stick around to find out. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video if you're ready for a story you won't forget, and hit subscribe to join our community of listeners who crave stories that inspire. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. What do you think Sam's story can teach us about forgiveness and new beginnings? Let's talk about it. In the quiet town of Elmsworth, New York, a humble minibus driver named Sam Obasi lives a life of gentle routine and unnoticed kindness. But when the President of the United States unexpectedly visits and embraces Sam in front of the entire town, eyes filled with tears and gratitude, everything changes. As whispers begin to ripple through the community, a powerful truth unfolds. Sam was once a shadow soldier, a man erased from official records, who saved the president during a violent military coup. Now living under a new name, Sam must confront a past he buried long ago while rediscovering his place in a world that has moved on without him. This is a story about honor and humility, memory and healing, and the quiet power of a life lived in service. What happens when a forgotten hero is finally seen, not by history but by the people around him? And how does a man who saved a nation learn to save himself? The Last Watchman is a journey through silence, redemption, and the beauty of second chances. The town of Elmsworth sat like a forgotten comma in the sentence of New York State. Not quite country, not quite city. Just far enough from the Hudson to hear the water on a quiet night, and just close enough to the freeway that the occasional truck horn pierced the silence like a stray memory. The town was built of red bricks and old trees. Children ran barefoot in spring, seniors waved from wooden porches in fall, and no one ever seemed to leave. And every morning, like clockwork, a white minibus with a hand-painted stripe of green and yellow rolled through the town's winding roads. The man behind the wheel was always the same. He wore a gray windbreaker, navy work pants, and a navy blue cap pulled low over his brow. His name, as far as anyone knew, was Sam Obasi. Sam's bus was more than transportation. It was a ritual. He picked up the school kids from Maple Street, the young mother and her toddler from Bridgeview, and old Mr. Clancy from the general store, who never said a word but always tipped him with a warm peppermint. Sam greeted each rider with a nod or a quiet good morning, and when they spoke to him he smiled politely. No more. No less. People respected Sam. He fixed his own bus, swept out the floors daily, and never once raised his voice in the 15 years he had driven the same route. No one could remember where he came from, exactly. The few who asked got vague answers, "Been here a while now," or "I like the quiet here." They left it at that. Elmsworth was the kind of place where people respected a man's silence as much as his word. But still, rumors passed like fog over coffee counters. Some said he used to be a mechanic in the Bronx. Others thought he was a retired teacher. Mrs. Bellamy, who ran the little library on Main, once suggested he had the look of an old soldier. "There's discipline in his stillness," she said. "Like someone who's held a rifle too long and chose to set it down." Most laughed that off. Sam Obasi? A soldier? He fed squirrels in the park and waited patiently when kids took too long tying their shoes. He gave up his Sundays to help repaint the community center. He was nobody and they loved him for it. Sam's home was just as quiet as his life. A two-bedroom brick bungalow at the end of a street lined with sycamores. No family visited. No pictures hung on the walls. The only companion was a limping dog named Lucky, who had once wandered into Sam's yard during a thunderstorm and never left. They were both creatures of habit and silence, coexisting like two old ghosts with nothing left to say. Sometimes at night, Sam would sit on the back porch and stare out into the woods behind his house. He never drank, never smoked, but every so often, his fingers trembled as if gripping something no longer there. A weapon, a trigger, or maybe just the weight of memory. One evening, as Sam scrubbed oil from his hands in the sink, he caught a brief flash of something on the television he usually left on for noise. It was a news anchor, crisp and smiling, announcing that the president would be visiting Hudson Valley in a week to tour a manufacturing facility and give a speech about national revitalization. Sam froze. The sound faded into static in his mind. The name of the president, Ethan Carr, rolled across the screen like a whisper that came too close. Sam dried his hands slowly. His reflection in the window stared back at him, unfamiliar. For a moment, the quiet man of Elmsworth was gone, and in his place stood someone else. Someone he had tried to forget. The following morning, Elmsworth woke as it always did, but something in the air felt restless. It was subtle, like the first pressure drop before a storm. Mrs. Bellamy mentioned the president's upcoming visit to everyone who came in for their reserved books. Children at the elementary school practiced waving flags and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. The mayor had his best suit dry cleaned and rehearsed a welcoming speech that he hoped would make it onto the evening news. But for Sam Obasi, the morning felt heavier than most. As he turned the ignition on his minibus and listened to the engine settle into its gentle hum, he saw himself in the side mirror. Just a man in a cap, older now, with lines beneath his eyes that spoke of many quiet years. And yet, he could not shake the memory of the name. Ethan Carr. The name did not belong on television. It belonged to a different world. A darker world. One where men whispered in languages only understood behind closed doors. One where the air stank of cordite and jungle rot. Where decisions were made with silencers, not signatures. Sam drove his usual route. He picked up little Jamal and his sister on Oak Ridge, their tiny feet stomping on the step rail as they laughed about cartoons. He waved at Miss Ellie and her garden of crooked sunflowers. He passed the diner and nodded at Freddie, who poured coffee like it was a sacred duty. To everyone else it was a normal day. To Sam it was a tightrope walk over a pit of ghosts. That night he sat on his porch, Lucky at his feet, listening to the wind play through the trees. His mind wandered back, not to New York, not to Elmsworth, but to a jungle clearing thousands of miles away. He had been known by another name then. Sergeant Kalu. Operative of a covert international unit buried so deep it didn't exist on paper. Men like him were called different things by different governments, but in whispers they were known simply as shadow soldiers. He remembered the mission. A coup in an unnamed West African state. The government was fracturing. Ethnic divisions. Rebel factions. A diplomatic envoy was caught in the chaos, including a young American intelligence operative operating under a civilian cover, Ethan Carr. Command said to leave them. Collateral. The mission was to eliminate a rebel general and destroy a weapons cache. No deviations. Sam remembered standing over a satellite radio, listening to those orders, while the camp around them burned. And he remembered disobeying them. He led 4 men into enemy territory, flanked the rebel camp under cover of darkness, and extracted the envoy. They lost 2. One was a kid from Durban, barely 19. The other was Sam's closest friend, Danilo, taken out by a sniper as they reached the chopper. He remembered pulling Carr's bloodied body through the mud, firing blind into the trees, shouting for the pilot to wait just one more second. He remembered Carr looking up at him, gasping, eyes filled with panic and disbelief, whispering, "Why did you come back?" And Sam had answered, "Simply because you were left behind." The chopper rose. The night swallowed the flames. And then Sam disappeared. He slipped through the cracks of the world. No medals. No reunions. Just a plane ticket and a false identity. He changed his name. Found Elmsworth. Chose a life where no one knew who he had been. But now, Ethan Carr was not only alive, he was President of the United States. And he was coming to Hudson Valley. Sam's hands trembled as he set down the tea he had brewed and let the silence settle over him like ash. If Carr recognized him, everything would change. The life he had built, the peace he had earned through years of silence and simplicity, could be shattered in a moment. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. He had made peace with the past. But the past, it seemed, had not made peace with him. In town, the preparations continued. Flags hung from light poles. Security teams coordinated logistics. A makeshift stage was built at the old shoe factory's lot. Children rehearsed their lines. Old men complained about blocked roads. And the mayor smiled at every passing camera. None of them knew what thunder lurked beneath the quiet hum of a minibus engine, nor what history echoed in the soft footsteps of the man who drove it. The day dawned sharp and cloudless. A thin film of dew clung to the grass and shimmered under the morning light like a quiet warning. Elmsworth had never seen so much bustle. Roads were cleared. Barricades were set up. The local high school marching band assembled in pressed uniforms near the stage erected by the old factory. Sam Obasi followed his usual morning routine. He fed Lucky, swept the steps, and washed his minibus with a rag that had seen better years. But today there was a slight rigidity in his movements, like a soldier returning to parade after decades of rest. Every sound was sharper. Every glance lingered longer than usual. His route had been adjusted. He had been asked to transport 2 members of the logistics team to the site before the official motorcade arrived. They were young, fresh-faced professionals from Washington who stared at their phones and talked about clearance codes and drone footage. To them, Sam was just the quiet driver. "Nice town," one of them said absently, looking out the window. Sam only nodded. As they approached the main square, he saw the barricades and uniformed security. Police officers, Secret Service agents, and drones that looked like black dragonflies hovered above. A crowd had already formed behind the fences, waving signs and flags, laughing and murmuring. Sam parked at the designated checkpoint and stepped out, nodding once to the officer on duty. Then he walked a few paces away from the crowd just to watch. The noise was distant, a hum against the silence inside him. At precisely 10:30, the presidential motorcade arrived. Black vehicles, sleek and glossy, moved like a procession of beetles. The lead SUV stopped. Then the long black limousine known as the Beast rolled into place. It gleamed under the morning sun. Secret Service agents flanked it, their sunglasses reflecting nothing but blue sky and steel. The mayor stepped forward, grinning nervously, ready to offer his hand and deliver his practice speech. But the rear door did not open for him. Instead, it opened slowly and out stepped Ethan Carr. He looked older now, grayer around the temples, heavier in the shoulders, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the crowd not with a politician's gaze, but with something deeper, something searching. Then he froze. His gaze locked onto a figure standing beside a modest white minibus. A man in a windbreaker and cap, hands clasped behind his back, standing still, not waving, not cheering, just watching. The president blinked. His mouth opened but no sound came. He stepped away from his security detail, ignoring their signals. The mayor called after him, confused, but Carr walked past him. The crowd hushed. Cameras clicked in rapid succession. Agents moved in quickly, then hesitated as Carr raised a hand to stop them. He walked straight to Sam. The 2 men stood face to face. Neither spoke. Then, without a word, the President of the United States embraced the minibus driver. His arms wrapped around the smaller man with a kind of desperate reverence. A man who had once been bloodied and terrified in a jungle now wept into the shoulder of the quiet stranger. Gasps swept through the crowd. Phones were raised. 1,000 lenses captured the moment. Sam remained motionless for a heartbeat. Then his hand, slow and uncertain, rested on the president's back. "I thought you were dead," Carr whispered hoarsely, not caring who heard. "They said you were gone. That you didn't make it out." Sam pulled back, looked into Carr's eyes and said softly, "I made it. Just not all of me." Carr nodded, wiping his eyes. "You saved my life. I never forgot. Not for a day." Sam looked around at the crowd, at the agents poised to intervene, at the people who knew him only as a kind man who drove a bus. His voice was steady, quiet, and weighted by years. "That part of my life was over," he said. "Until now." Carr turned to the cameras and the gathering storm of reporters, then back to Sam. "They'll want to know who you are," he said. Sam nodded once. "They don't need to know everything." Carr smiled through tears. "Maybe not everything, but they should know your name." Sam stared at him, and for the first time in many years the mask cracked. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "They already do," he said. "It's Sam." Then he turned and walked back to his minibus, leaving the president standing amidst stunned silence, holding the memory of a man the world thought had vanished. Behind the crowd, the wind stirred. In that moment, Elmsworth was no longer just a quiet town. It was the stage upon which history had come full circle. And Sam Obasi was no longer just a driver. He was a ghost remembered. The footage of President Carr embracing a quiet minibus driver in a sleepy New York town swept across every news network within hours. No one knew the full story, and that made it even more potent. Speculation ran wild. Who was this man? What did he do? Why had the president wept? Pundits filled the gaps with guesses, but the White House offered nothing. No official statement. No press conference. Just a brief, single-line comment from the press secretary. The president was reunited with an individual from his past. That's all we can say at this time. But the silence only stirred the storm. Journalists began digging. Photos were enhanced, zoomed, scanned for facial recognition matches. They came up empty. Sam Obasi, as he existed in Elmsworth, had no digital footprint before 15 years ago. No social media. No official employment records before he registered as a driver. A ghost. And yet, in that small town, life continued. Mostly. Sam didn't change his route. He drove the children. He picked up groceries for Mrs. Lawton, who had arthritis in both knees. He fixed a boy's bicycle chain outside the library. He smiled, nodded, kept his voice soft. But he noticed it, the way people looked at him now. Not with suspicion, but with something deeper. A mixture of curiosity and awe. The kind of respect that made him uncomfortable. At the local diner, people fell silent when he walked in. Some tried to start conversations. Others offered to pay for his meals. The old routine, comforting and quiet, had been fractured. And then came the knock. It was early evening when they arrived. 2 black SUVs, quiet engines, tinted windows. The kind of vehicles that meant business. Sam watched them from his porch, arms folded, Lucky sitting upright at his side, ears twitching. 2 men stepped out. They were not in suits, but they had the bearing of men who answered only to those with stars on their shoulders. The lead man, tall and graying at the temples, approached slowly. "Sergeant Kalu," he said with a nod, voice low. "We hope to speak with you." Sam didn't correct him. "You're not the first to come looking," Sam replied, standing. "No, but we're the first who know exactly who you are." A pause hung between them. "We're not here to drag you back," the man continued. "But there are people who want to honor what you did. Officially. A ceremony. The president himself." "No," Sam said. The man blinked. "No." Sam stepped off the porch, his voice calm but sharp. "I did what I did to save a man. I didn't do it for medals. Or parades. Or citations in secret archives. I left that world behind." The man tried again, more gently. "You deserve to be recognized." Sam looked him square in the eyes. "My brothers died that night. You want to recognize something? Find their families. Give them what they never got." The man nodded slowly. "Understood." They left without further insistence. That night, Sam sat in his kitchen with the lights off, a cup of tea in his hand. Outside, a reporter's van parked briefly near the curb. They didn't approach. They simply waited, hoping for a sighting, a moment, a story to extend the frenzy. He stared at the steam rising from the cup and whispered names. The names of the men he had served with. Men who had vanished in the dark of the jungle. Men whose voices still lived in his head. Danilo, Jose, Marco, Franklin, Zubair. He whispered each one, his lips trembling. "I remember," he said. "You are not forgotten." He looked down at Lucky, whose soft eyes watched him in silence, as if the old dog knew more than most. The world now knew something of who he was. But they would never truly know what he had given up. What he had carried with him every day since he stepped off that extraction chopper. In Elmsworth, the leaves began to turn. Autumn crept in, slow and gold. The town settled again, the frenzy fading into a distant ripple. And Sam kept driving. He kept his silence. But behind his eyes, storms still moved. The past had touched the present. And though he had walked away from it, it had never walked away from him. 3 days after the president's visit, the phone in Sam Obasi's house rang. It was not the landline which he had disconnected years ago. It was a phone he kept hidden in a locked metal box in the attic. An old satellite model, thick and crude by today's standards. It had not rung in over a decade. But tonight it did. Sam stood in the attic's dusty space, staring at the blinking green light on the device. The sound was soft, but it cut through him like a blade. He hesitated. Then he unlocked the box, lifted the handset, and pressed it to his ear. "Is it really you?" came the voice on the other end. Sam's breath caught. The voice was unmistakable. Female. West African accent, smooth as silk and hard as steel beneath. A ghost he had not dared to remember. "Zainab," he said quietly. "I saw you on television," she said. "Well, I saw them talk about you. They never used your real name. But I knew." Sam closed his eyes. "I thought you were dead." "You thought we were all dead," she said with a quiet laugh. "I was in the hills after the chopper left. I barely made it out. New name. New country. Same silence." Sam sat on a crate, the phone pressed to his ear like a confession. "Why now?" he asked. "Because you broke cover first," she said. "The world saw your face. And I realized, maybe it's time we spoke again." They sat in silence for a long moment, the years between them echoing through static. "We did terrible things," Zainab said finally. "Good things too. But mostly terrible. We were built to disappear. But we never really do we?" "No," Sam whispered. "We just fade in different ways." Zainab's voice softened. "I kept track of them, Sam. The families. I found Danilo's mother in Sao Paulo. Sent her a letter. She cried for hours. Not because she was sad, because someone remembered him. Sam felt something stir in his chest, old and brittle. A warmth that hurt. "I don't want to be found again," he said. "Not by reporters. Not by governments. I just want quiet." "I understand," she said. "I won't call again. I just needed to hear your voice. To know that you were real." He nodded, though she could not see it. "You still have it?" he asked. "What?" "The coin." There was a pause. "Yes," she said softly. "I kept it." The coin was old, gold-plated, with a lion engraved on one side. They had given it to each other during their last mission, a silent vow between two shadows. "If you ever see this again, it means I'm alive." Zainab's voice was steadier now. "Goodbye, Sam." "Goodbye, Zainab." He ended the call, powered down the phone, and placed it back into the box. He did not lock it this time. That night, the wind howled outside. Lucky curled beside him, snoring gently. Sam lay awake, eyes open to the ceiling, listening to the storm. The silence in his house was deep, but it no longer felt like a prison. It was something else now. A memory with walls. A shrine of absence. The next morning, Sam awoke early. He shaved, wore a clean shirt, took the long way to town. As he drove past the library, he saw a young boy trying to fix a chain on his bicycle. Sam pulled over, stepped out, and offered a hand. "Need help?" The boy nodded, eyes wide. Sam knelt, fingers deft and patient. He worked without speaking, the way he had always done. But this time, when the chain slipped back into place and the boy grinned, Sam said something he hadn't said in years. "My name's Sam," he told him. "What's yours?" The boy blinked in surprise, then answered. Sam smiled. It was the beginning of something small. But it was real. The shadows of the past still lived inside him. But for the first time in years, Sam had spoken beyond them. Not as a soldier. Not as a ghost. But as a man choosing to stay. The morning sun stretched across Elmsworth like a golden shawl. Mist curled from the Hudson River in gentle tendrils. Birds darted between telephone wires, and distant train horns moaned across the valley. Sam Obasi, once known by a different name in a different life, stood by his minibus sipping from a steaming paper cup of coffee. The town had begun to exhale again, slowly returning to its old rhythm. Children laughed as they chased one another outside the bakery. The local mechanic, Robbie, was already under a car hood, cursing cheerfully. The corner store played a soft tune from an old radio, one of those soul songs that never quite left the bones. And yet, beneath the surface, something had shifted. It wasn't fame. It wasn't infamy. It was recognition. People still didn't know the details, but they knew that Sam had lived a life worth tears from a president. A life that must have carried weight. And it made them watch him with a certain gentleness, a quiet reverence, as if they understood not to ask questions. Today, however, someone did ask. After his morning route, Sam parked by the community center where renovations were underway. A young woman stood by a stack of paint cans, struggling to move them. She wore a navy sweater, jeans, and the kind of boots meant more for style than labor. "Need a hand?" Sam asked. She smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. "I wouldn't say no. These things are heavier than they look." He helped her carry the cans inside, placing them near a row of drop cloths. The walls were being repainted in bright colors. A mural was sketched faintly in chalk, the early stages of something hopeful. "Kids' art project?" he asked. She nodded. "We're doing a Voices of Elmsworth wall. Stories, faces, people who've shaped this place." Sam gave a half smile. "Sounds like you'll need more paint." "I wouldn't be surprised," she said, then paused. "Would you ever want to be part of it?" Sam looked at her. "I'm no one special," he said softly. "You're wrong," she said gently. "You're part of this town. People talk about how kind you are. What you did for Mrs. Bellamy after her fall. How you shovel the sidewalks before anyone asks. That matters." Sam looked down, the weight of her words unfamiliar. "I've lived a different kind of life," he said. "Not the kind people paint on walls." "Maybe not," she said, "but the world needs stories like yours. Even if it's just the part that started here." He nodded, not as a promise but as something close. That evening, he sat on his porch as the sky turned violet. Lucky rested at his feet, and the old radio played a Nina Simone tune that fluttered out through the window. From his chair, he could see children practicing skateboard tricks in the lot across the street. One of them fell and scraped his elbow. Sam stood, walked over, and crouched beside the boy. "You all right?" he asked. The boy winced. "Hurts?" Sam reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief. "Let's clean that up." The boy looked at him, blinking back tears. Thanks, mister. Sam smiled. Call me Sam. Later he stood in front of the mirror. He studied his face, the deep-set lines, the graying beard, the steady eyes. For the first time in years he did not see a soldier. He did not see a shadow. He saw a man who had once disappeared, and now slowly was allowing himself to return. Not to the world stage, not to politics or headlines, but to people, to community, to the quiet, small things that made a life whole. A few days later, a letter arrived. It bore the White House seal, but it wasn't official correspondence. It was handwritten. Sam, I've never been able to explain what you did for me. I owe you everything. I meant it when I said I'd make it right. But I also understand now that some debts cannot be repaid with medals. You gave me back my life. I hope I can return the favor in smaller ways. If you ever want to speak again, really speak, I'm here. Until then, take care of that town. They're lucky to have you. Ethan. Sam folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer beneath his kitchen counter. Not out of fear, not out of shame, but because some memories were sacred and this one had finally come full circle. He stepped outside into the wind. No one followed. No one asked. No one needed to. Because Sam Obasi now belonged to Elmsworth, not as a mystery, not as a ghost, but as a man with roots. And the quiet around him no longer silenced the past. It honored it. The wind carried a chill now, one that curled under coats and into bones. Autumn was giving way to early winter, and Elmsworth prepared itself with wreaths on doors, cinnamon in kitchens, and the first lighting of the town square's old lamppost tree. Sam Obasi drove through Main Street, glancing at the storefronts he knew by heart. The bakery, the hardware store, the stationer's shop with the old man who insisted on handwriting receipts. They were ordinary places, but they were the reason he stayed. As he reached the final turn in his daily route, a girl in a red scarf waved from her porch, grinning through missing teeth. Sam honked the minibus horn gently and waved back. No one called him hero. No one asked him about battles or presidents anymore. Whatever storm had swept through weeks ago had finally passed. But it hadn't passed him. Inside he carried the story still. Not as a wound, not even as a duty, but as a thread, one strand of many, that now bound him to this life. That night, a letter arrived, not from the White House this time, but from Ghana. The return address was written in the tight, elegant script of a woman who once saved his life. Zainab. Inside was a photograph. It showed 5 small gravestones in a field of wildflowers. Beneath it, a note. They sleep in the sun now. No more shadows. Come see them someday. Or just remember, we're allowed to live, Sam. We are. Sam held the photo between his fingers. He stared at each name etched into stone. Danilo, Marco, Jose, Franklin, Zubair. 5 men he had lost. 5 he had buried in memory, and now could finally mourn in daylight. He folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the one from President Carr. No longer secrets, just history. The town of Elmsworth gathered that weekend for the winter festival. Lanterns lined the sidewalks. Children carried paper snowflakes. There was spiced cider and laughter and scarves in every color. Sam stood off to the side watching. Then he saw something that stopped him. The young woman from the community center. He now knew her name was Naomi, had finished the mural. Painted in bold color with layers of blues, ochres, and soft reds, the wall told stories of the town's founders, its artists, its farmers, its teachers. And in the corner, painted smaller than the others, was Sam's face. Not in uniform. Not saluting. Just sitting on the front steps of the minibus, smiling slightly with Lucky by his side. Above him in clean letters it read, "The Watchman. Sometimes the quietest among us guard the most." Sam felt something shift again inside him. Not pain, not pride, but release. Naomi appeared beside him. "I hope that's all right," she said. "I wanted to ask first, but I also thought, maybe some stories are worth telling without permission." Sam looked at the mural, then at her. "It's more than all right," he said quietly. She smiled, then turned back toward the crowd. Later, as the sky dimmed and snow began to fall, Sam walked Lucky down the path by the river. The dog trotted ahead, tail wagging, nose to the ground. Sam's breath misted in the cold. He looked up. The stars had come out. For years, Sam had thought of himself as a man buried in the past. A soldier whose only legacy was survival. A ghost with no place left to haunt. But now he knew different. He had become something else. Not erased. Not forgotten. See, understood. Name. As they reached the river's edge, Sam looked at Lucky. "Come on, old boy. Let's go home." And they walked back through the snowfall, toward the town that had given him something no battlefield ever could. A second beginning. The end. Here are 7 moral lessons drawn from this story. 1. True heroism often exists in silence. Sam Obasi lived quietly, driving children to school and helping elderly neighbors with their errands. No one knew he had once saved the life of a president or served in the darkest corners of covert military operations. His humility is a reminder that real heroes do not always wear medals or seek applause. They do not require recognition to do what is right. In a world obsessed with visibility and accolades, this story teaches us that many of the most honorable lives are lived far from the spotlight. Their legacy is not built on headlines but on impact, small, quiet acts that ripple through communities and generations. 2. The past shapes us, but it does not have to imprison us. Sam carried the weight of his past not as a badge, but as a burden. For years he kept it locked away, allowing guilt and grief to define his identity. And yet, through the re-emergence of that past, through the president's embrace, Zainab's call, and the mural on the wall, he discovered that the past could be acknowledged, honored, and released. It did not need to shackle him. We all carry histories filled with pain, loss, or mistakes. But this story reminds us that healing doesn't always require forgetting. It requires acceptance and the courage to move forward while carrying memory gently, rather than letting it weigh us down. 3. Dignity comes from service, not status. Despite having served in elite, clandestine missions that shaped national destiny, Sam found his highest purpose in serving his community. He didn't see driving a minibus as less than his past. He embraced it fully, knowing the value of being present, helpful, and kind. Dignity is not rooted in what you've done or how much power you hold. It's in how you treat others, in how you show up for people, especially when no one is watching. Whether you are a soldier or a driver, a president or a painter, it is how you serve that matters most. 4. Identity can be reclaimed even after being erased. Sam's life was one of disappearance. To protect his country, he erased his identity, his name, his story. He became a shadow. But over time, the community gave him something back. Not just a name, but a place, a face, and a voice. Zainab's letter, Naomi's mural, the boy on the bike. All these threads helped him stitch together a new identity built not on secrecy, but on authenticity. Many people in the real world struggle with lost identity, due to trauma, displacement, or sacrifice. Sam's story reminds us that reclamation is possible. The journey is long, but belonging and self-worth can be rebuilt, one act, one word, one connection at a time. 5. Community is the soil where healing takes root. It wasn't therapy or medals that began to heal Sam, it was people. The townsfolk who waved at him each morning, the children who trusted him, the young woman who painted his portrait. Though they never knew the full details of his past, they embraced him as part of their fabric. It was their quiet, consistent acceptance that created the space for him to begin releasing what haunted him. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in the small, daily affirmations that you matter, that you belong. Sam's arc shows us that a compassionate community can be the greatest medicine for the deepest wounds. 6. Recognition is powerful, but forgiveness is transformative. When President Carr embraced Sam, it was recognition. But what followed? Zainab's call, Sam whispering the names of his fallen comrades, the mural tribute. These were acts of emotional release. Forgiveness, both of others and of oneself, is not an easy process. Sam had to forgive the military that abandoned him, the silence that swallowed his past, and perhaps most painfully, himself for surviving when others did not. This story teaches us that recognition from others may begin the process, but true healing only comes when we forgive inwardly. And sometimes, forgiveness is not about saying, "It's okay," but rather saying, "I will carry this differently now." 7. A second beginning is always possible. Perhaps the greatest moral lesson is this: no matter what you've done, endured, or lost, life can offer a second beginning. Sam did not seek redemption. He did not set out to be found. But life found him anyway, and through that unfolding, he found himself anew. It is never too late to reconnect, to speak a new truth, to live with intention. The snow in the final chapter, the mural on the wall, the dog at his side, all symbolize that his second life, though quieter, was no less meaningful. We are all allowed to begin again, and sometimes, those second beginnings are the most honest ones we'll ever live. Together, these lessons build a story not just of survival, but of transformation. The Last Watchman is not only about a man who once saved a president. It is about a man who saved himself. One choice, one moment, one small kindness at a time. Disclaimer: the story you're about to hear is entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. This narrative is created with the intent to provide moral lessons, motivation, inspiration, and valuable insights to our viewers. The themes explored in the story aim to encourage reflection on concepts such as redemption, forgiveness, community, and personal growth. It is not based on real events or individuals and is meant solely for entertainment and educational purposes. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Sam Obasi's story. We hope it inspired you to think about the power of second chances, the quiet strength in every person, and the healing that can come from community and understanding. Remember, sometimes the most profound heroes are the ones who go unnoticed, living lives of quiet significance, showing us that redemption and transformation are always within reach. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, teach, and motivate. We've got plenty more coming your way, and we'd love for you to be part of the journey. And if you haven't already, check out our other videos. There's a whole world of stories waiting to be discovered. Until next time, thank you for watching, and remember, every story has something to teach us.